Good evening, everyone. Welcome to Questions About Music. What is Questions About Music? Questions About Music is a series of talks in the Department of Music here at the University of Alberta. And imagine a forum for everyone in the department and in the community. So we really want to engage and talk with and talk for performers, composers, people that do research on music, people that do activism, people that work in research administration, education, everything that, if you're passionate about music, this should be a place for you to come and talk with us. And I say talk with us because this is a forum where, as a department, we invite guest speakers, and I'll introduce my guest speaker here in a second, but also what we really want to do is make sure that people in the community, in the department, come to us with questions that they would like to see asked. So let's say that there is something that you're curious about, and perhaps you don't have a course that is running right now that addresses that question. This is the perfect forum for you. You can shoot us an email, and we'll invite someone that is perfectly placed to ask that kind of question. And we do that all the time. So normally people approach us at the end of a talk like this and say, oh, by the way, I am the only bass player in the department. Can we have a conversation about it? This literally happened in the past, not with a bass player, but. And we try to really kind of like have people that do research, people that do engage in communities, people that we just had an incredible guitar player coming from Europe and telling us everything about what it is like to self-produce yourself as a musician. So don't get shy about the topics that you could see discussed in this forum. One thing that we do for sure is that we don't ask people to come in and give a formal paper presentation of 45 minutes, which happens, and it's needed in other places, for other sort of like typologies of forums in the department. Here we have a conversation instead, and then we gather around a beautiful glass of wine or a glass of pop or tea or coffee at the end to mingle. This is also a place really that we, kind of series that we do for people to cross paths and share experiences and tell us what you have been up to and so on and so forth. For undergraduate, graduate, faculty, people from other departments that are curious about music, everyone is welcome. So today, here now, my name is Fabio Morabito. I'm a musicologist here in the Department of Music, and I am joined today by Olivia Menard, who used to be one of my students for the past 3 years, and Olivia just graduated about 5 months ago. And I'll ask Olivia to introduce herself in a moment, but one of the things that we want to do today is to speak with someone that just got through one of our programs and talk about what's her daily life now and what sort of thing is she engaging with in terms of professions, but also interests and more. So Olivia, would you like to tell us who you are and what brought you to the UofA some time ago? Tell us something about your journey.
Sure, I'd love to. Normally when I introduce myself on my resume or if I'm sending a bio somewhere, I'm always like trombonist, composer, educator.
Yes.
And then I shuffle the order depending on what things are happening. So today I would say educator, trombonist, composer, because putting education at the forefront. I always knew that I was going to be a music teacher. I remember walking into my band class when I was 11 years old. And I was like, yep, this is it. That's what we're doing. We're doing this in some way for the rest of my life. I was very fortunate to be taught piano a little bit by my nana, but I didn't really engage with music making with other people until my very first band class in grade 7 at KLO Middle School. And I immediately fell in love. I was a very obnoxious child, and I got put on the clarinet because my mom had a clarinet at home. And I have never felt so welcome and accepted. And I was like, that is what I need to do. Make people feel welcome, make people feel accepted, and then teach them something wonderful along the way. So when I moved to Edmonton in grade 9 and I switched to the trombone because of a cadet music program, I knew that I was going to go to the UofA and study in French at Campus Saint-Jean because I was in French immersion, and I had heard that you could work the fastest. And when I went into the university, my goal was to get out as fast as possible because the concept of university annoyed me because I really found it. I was like, who needs university? Could you possibly learn there? I already know everything. I'm going to finish and then I'm going to go teach. And then in about the second year, I'd say, of my education degree there, I was like, I would like to be good at the trombone as well. So I decided after that I was going to do an after degree in music here at the U of A. So I immediately started taking courses that would transfer well but by the time I came here. Lots of the courses cross over between the two campuses if you've never been. It's quite nearby. It's like a 10-minute drive just to the east of here.
And it's the French campus.
A French campus, yes. And there is no music program there. There's a music education program, secondary. So I did have some of the courses. And so by the time I got here, it was kind of like it was my 2.5 year after I finished my education degree. And I actually feel pretty grateful for doing that way, even though it is backwards, because I could work during my music degree. I started subbing. I had part-time contracts. I was covering medical leaves.
Oh, very interesting, because you had already done the education bit,
yes.
so you could sub in classes.
Yes, and so
those would be general classes or music classes.
Or music classes too, and I could really start, I guess like networking is like a word, but just meeting people a little bit earlier, and so I think that really like colored my experience as a music student too. I also had learned how to be a student. I did not take, as I said, I dismissed the idea of university originally. So throughout the course of my 4 years as an education student, I really learned how to study effectively, how to work hard, how to care about classes, how to get the most out of them. So when I did get here to do my music degree, I could really enjoy it and appreciate it. And because I had worked as well, I knew what was kind of out there. So I could really appreciate what I was getting here. And so I was really fortunate to study a number of disciplines, including trombone performance, composition, got to take musicology courses and study the cultures of Romanticism. I got to do my own directed theory study, which was so exciting to do research and analysis on a piece of music by Ruth Crawford Seeger, which I totally loved. And so I could really explore the other aspects of music because I was in that general route, and I could enjoy it because I knew what I was getting, and I kind of knew what was out there. So
this is so beautiful that you're saying that you kind of were appreciating the experience of being this music degree, kind of also because you had done, and you said, I've done it backward, and let's give a bit of context, because if you take the B.Ed degree today, which we offer, is one of the degree that we offer in case you want to specialize in music. Normally people take first the BMAS part and then go in to do the education courses, which is kind of you do the reverse. But one of the things that we were saying is that, yes, this is how the degree is set up in this case, but there is no one way of doing it. Like, I'm sure that, for example, you already said that you could that allowed you to sub in, kind of like, it gives you different possibilities. And also, there's no one way of learning people. It's not that you have to learn first one thing and then the next. And Olivia is the incarnation of this, because she actually didn't do what the B.Ed degree prescribes. But I loved what you mentioned a moment ago about the diversity of kind of classes that you were taking. So you were learning trombone, but you were taking musicology courses, composition classes. I mean, that's a kind of a pretty diverse range of things. And I wonder, this sounds kind of like shaping also who you are. At the beginning you said, like, I introduced myself as being an educator, a trombonist, a composer. Tell me a bit more about how those classes formed who you are today, this diverse range of classes.
As many people are, I just feel you feel so deeply passionate about the discipline in general. And I think, once again, like, I'm so grateful that I came to my undergraduate degree in music after my degree in education, because I could really appreciate everything for what it was. And something that I have found more and more recently is that every single discipline is very connected to the others. While it does have obviously its unique characteristics, but writing makes me a better musician, right? Playing trombone makes me a better teacher. If I'm a better trombonist, I can teach more to my students. Teaching makes me a better musician as well. Like, it's all very symbiotic. And I really wanted to take the time to explore all those aspects of it. I really loved musicology. It's so nice to feel connected to people from other places and times. It's something that we've always done, right? Music is, and this is a fundamental value of mine, is that music is like a human behavior, not a talent or a skill. It's something we do. So to explore that in all of its aspects, I felt grateful. And I also didn't want to limit myself either. I didn't want to, and this is partially because I was very insecure about my playing, I didn't want to limit myself and commit all this time to trombone just to find out I was not very good at it anyways in the end. I wouldn't be able to find work. I really wanted to be able to keep my options open. And I feel too like I enjoyed all of those things.
Yeah.
Why would I limit myself
No,
to any one thing? So
I totally agree. And what you said about that they complement each other, I couldn't agree more. You know, and this may be less obvious if you're not yet into a degree like this, but it feels a lot to say like learning to write in a certain way allows me to be a better teacher. You know, writing is about being a communicator, and then in the classroom you can use ways of structuring your thoughts in a different way, of thinking critical about what you're doing, about this activity, this human act that you mentioned. I love that. And one other thing that you said that I think is very important is that not only these things are connected, but you kind of do all of them regardless, in a way, which programs you are in. It's thinking about our department, you know, you went through that route. You started with the B.Ed at Saint Jean, and then you came in with the BMAS, and yet you were exposed to all of this. You know, so shout out to people out there. You don't need to choose now. You know, it's not that to be a music teacher, you need to be in the music ed course. Otherwise, you're not going to be a music teacher. Or if you want to be, you can do all these things. The beauty about being a university is that you're exposed to this. If you choose a certain path, you kind of like start specializing and doing more of that, maybe doing a more consequential way. But it's important to remind ourselves that no one asks you to choose super early. No one is asking you to choose your job while you're at university. University is supposed to make you better at all these things that are interconnected. So I agree with you. So one thing that perhaps people were not expecting is that you are also a composer. And before getting here, I just heard someone saying that they premiered one of your pieces.
Yeah.
Can you tell us something about it?
Yes. So I guess like to back up, like my background in composition is because two of my best friends from high school were writing a musical and they needed a composer. And the musical is about the women's suffrage movement in Manitoba. And that was like a huge passion project, or it's still present day, it's a huge passion project. And so I was like, I know music theory, I know instruments, I can compose. And then that was, you know, you got to believe in yourself sometimes, even if, so I appreciate that about myself and putting myself in there. And then I kind of just realized that actually I did need to learn how to compose and that it wasn't just something I could just do, which is, I also find that interesting, like too, just like, I think lots of people think some skills are inherent, like composition, like playing, like teaching, but they aren't, they are learnable and teachable skills. So, but more on that later. I guess with the premiere, so I organize a chamber orchestra in the city called River City Chamber Orchestra. And the premise is that we're trying to give pre-professional opportunities to people who are finishing their degrees, in their degree, before they get into an orchestra context. And the whole orchestra really is about opportunities. So people can play concertos who normally wouldn't have an opportunity. People can conduct us who maybe would not normally have had an opportunity for that. And then we love premiering new work, especially from young emerging composers. In the music world, I find still that it's a very competitive world for lots of people, specifically in classical music. So we really are trying to eliminate barriers with that. And then, you know, after like 3 years of like organizing that, I was like, okay, I think, you know, I've been learning how to compose at university. I wrote this piece for a summer program I did last year. Like, it'd be really great for my friends and family to hear it. And so we've worked on it together. Lydia, who conducts us, you know, she couldn't make the concert. So my best friend who had started the orchestra, he came back out from where he was doing school in Vancouver and he conducted it for us. So it was a very emotional, wonderful time. And, you know, just having your friends play your music, I could not believe how vulnerable it was. Like, you know, you think you get used to like being vulnerable as a musician because it's like, oh, I stand in masterclass and then something I've worked on for hours of one tears to pieces. And so, you know, I thought I'd hardened myself to the idea of like feedback from other people. But like having other people play my music was so scary. It's like, oh, that's my soul. That's my heart. They can see it. What if they think it's stupid? But then they did a great job. It was awesome. So,
beautiful mention about learning to be vulnerable in a variety of ways, and because that sets you up to learning more.
Yes.
Which is so key. And, you know, I'm sure that also was a key experience also for who you are in the classroom, who you are with kids. And so I love how these things complement.
Totally. And I find like vulnerability, like, you know, every time I try something new, like for example, this year I'm teaching ELA at one of my English language arts at one of my jobs, and I don't know how to do that. It's such a good reminder because sometimes with students, I'm like, why can't you just do it? But you forget how much you know, though. And it's so good to try new things and to remind yourself and to really, I need to be humbled Sometimes, actually frequently, I'm pretty vain, but like, so it's good though. It's so good for you to be like, I'm going to try this thing because why not? The world is out there.
Yeah, trying new things is a very good suggestion. Also thinking about people that are now in the degree, people that want to come and take this kind of degree, people that are already out there. Like, the university in general or learning is not supposed to kind of like give you, it's not kind of like putting information inside a box and then you take the information outside the box and you apply them. That might be for some kind of things that's important. But more than anything, it's, I would say, learning, being a degree is learning how to process this information and then process new information and also push you to things that you're not even, there are no classes for. But maybe we could talk a bit more about that. So what do you think, in terms of what this degree, this path, what sort of skills the sort of like provided you with, and things that you find yourself doing using now? Kind of like in your professional activity. Maybe you can say a little bit more about what is it that you're doing these days for work so that people have a bit of that context. I think I guess starting with like what I do for work. So I have two main jobs. My first job is with Edmonton Catholic Schools where I teach junior high band. So I do that in the morning. And in the afternoon, I teach at the Youth Orchestra of Northern Alberta, Sistema. If you're not familiar with Sistema is a social movement that started in Venezuela. The premise is that music creates social change, and ensemble music making can really impact the life of young people, and that it should belong to everyone regardless of class, race, where they come from, how much money they have, and it's about providing accessibility to those students. And so that's that touches really heavily on one of my values. And I also site manage, which means I do like the snack order, and I get subs in, and I schedule things, and then when we don't have a space, I make sure things can happen, those kinds of things. So lots of administration. And then, this is at the Winspear.
This is at the Winspear Center, yes. Yeah, it's in partnership with the Edmonton Symphony Orchestra that we do a lot of our work. And so those are my two main things. And then I'm very fortunate that occasionally I do play trombone in like a cover band and in a Latin group, which surprised me a lot. Get convocation band stuff sometimes. And then I guess like the rest of my time I spend kind of on passion projects like River City Chamber Orchestra, like the musical I'm writing with Settle a Score productions. So definitely the main thing is teaching, but there still is time for everything. And I actually think that is the great thing about university, because I think, like I said before, I was like, I want to get out and I want to get into the classroom as soon as I can, but then discovering those passions at university. So for example, playing. I never saw myself as a player. And then taking lessons, playing with other people, playing higher level music, I was like, that is something I really want to do. And so I play trombone still. And being a better trombonist makes me a better teacher, because I can see beyond what the student is maybe doing. And every time maybe I learn a new thing for myself, when I teach myself, I can teach them. For example, when I learned how to sing solfege, it completely changed the way I teach band, because lots of kids don't have an ear, or they do have an ear, but it hasn't been developed. So even theory and oral skills, which don't seem applicable, they are very applicable to teaching students how to play instruments and how to pull that out of students.
And let's specify, because with both of these jobs, you're not teaching just trombones.
No.
You're teaching a bunch of different instruments.
Yes, At UofA, I teach trumpet, trombone, horn, and tuba. And then at my other job, I teach all the wind instruments. So flute, clarinet, oboe, saxophone, percussion, those kinds of things. So that, to me, in teaching, there are two things you are teaching kids, two main things. There is technical instrument operation, which is actually the easiest part of teaching. And then there is teaching the music, like the mind. And I don't know if this has happened to anyone in the room, but this happened to me. I was told that I could not sing and I should just never try again at a young age, which is the most debilitating thing you could say to a child of any age. And it's also not true. You can teach kids to sing, and the notion of tone deafness is actually so rare. And so, taking those classes at university, learning stuff like even like tonics and dominants, and learning how to teach kids, it makes them better musicians. Because when the music is in their mind, and as many of us know as performers, when the music is in your mind, the instrument operation becomes so much easier, because you can marry the two things.
If the instrument is especially based on those principles, for sure.
Totally. And I just found too, like as like a, when I was younger, I was quite successful at instrument operation, right? Instrument operation came very easily to me. but the internal music did not. But now that I've learned the internal music aspect of it, my students can get a more full, holistic music education in that way.
And when we said that you're teaching this other instrument, it's not that you're doing one-on-one lessons with these people. It's more like that you're teaching them to be together with music. It's especially depending on the ages that we're talking about, because the people in the UofA system, I guess, what's the age range?
Right now the UofA system as a whole does grade 1 to 12, depending on where, because we have 5 schools kind of in the city that we work out of, and then plus the Winspear Center. The kids I work with for the most part are 11 to 15-ish.
Yes.
Give or take a few years on each side, depending on what year it is or what kid. But for the brass class, that is most of the kids are in grades 5 to 10-ish.
But the beauty, when you said that you're also doing the snack orders, let's give context, because, it's not just this bunch of kids coming together and playing music together. There's much more going on. It's sort of like it's sort of like structuring the afternoon in a way.
Yes.
It's with some healthy snacks.
Yes.
A healthy way of engaging together. So there's much more going on. Would you like to tell us a bit more about
UofA, at the Winspear, we bus kids from a couple schools. Some kids get there on their own way, and then we all just hang out. We have snack, goldfish, it's the food of the day, pita, hummus, cheese strings, apples, good time, the finer things in life. We give them a break outside so they can run around and be obnoxious outside, and then they come back in, they're ready to learn. And then we have an hour and a half of everyday after school music programming for them. And usually it takes performance sectionals, so I just have the brass students, there's a woodwind teacher, there's a violin teacher, there's a cello teacher. Then we spend time in sectionals, and then once a week they have orchestra where they're all together and they're making music as a group. And like I said, the fundamental thing is that it is community-based, right? Like, obviously, like, we're not trying to raise like the next generation of like classical musicians.
That's not the point.
Some of them might go on to do that, which is great, but there is so much more to music than that. And then being a professional, cellist or whatever, that's not about that for them. It's, hey, I'm with my friends. Music feels good. I am learning how to work with others on a team. I'm learning how to work on something myself. I'm learning how to be vulnerable with other people. And for some of these kids, because there is a financial barrier to music education for many students. Lots of kids can't afford private lessons. Lots of kids can't afford music programming. Lots of schools don't have instrumental music programming anymore. It is that opportunity that some kids who would have had access to that would already get all those benefits and lessons, and that you get in other extracurriculars too. So the idea being that you deserve to have this opportunity to be with your friends, to do something together. That's not just, the group project at school for your book study. It's like you can do something fun and make something beautiful. And that is really what's transformative. And you see it quite often with many of the kids who come in and who just aren't sure of themselves. And they don't know who they are. And to give them that instrument really, and to watch them grow, it's the best feeling on earth.
Especially because you said kind of like that happened to you as well when you kind of started playing the clarinet in the case, and you knew, I want to do more of this, and you find kind of like a place in the way, which is quite beautiful. But this, and whereas what you do in the school, how is that different?
So the big thing about UofA is that you're working with other musicians and music professionals.
So you're not by yourself.
You're not by yourself. So it's a bigger support network. Working with the ESO and at the Winspear definitely lends a seriousness to it that the kids are really excited about. They love going to the Winspear. They love meeting the Edmonton Symphony musicians. They love playing in orchestra together. Whereas band, I'm one teacher. There's 35 students in my Band 7 class, and then I'm teaching all of the instruments from scratch, and they only get it 2 times 43 minutes a week. So about at most, by the time they set their instruments up, like an hour and 10 minutes of actual playing time.
Right.
And so whereas UofA, it's like they get an hour or 2 every day. So that ends up being 6 hours, right? So the band program at school, which is very important and I love, it's definitely much more get to the most kids as possible, which is super important.
Yes.
But it definitely does it, the kids won't become as advanced players in that sense. And every day we get together. Right now in grade 7, we're learning whole notes, and we're learning how to breathe before we make the next note. And they know 3 notes, B flat, C, and D, and they sound great. So
I love this.
Yeah, they sound great. They're killing it. So, and I love it. The joy of giving a kid an instrument. they could not believe.
Of course.
Yeah, it's the best.
Yes.
But it is definitely like not as many resources, which is no one's fault per se. It's just the way it is.
And also, I think it's wonderful that you're doing this. You are in these two very different programs, so you also get to work in different way. But while you were mentioning these things, I kept wondering, what did the sort of like the degree that you took here prepare to some of this? Kind of like, did you get some lesson on how to teach flute or how to teach the first three notes? Tell us, for people, imagine that we didn't know.
Okay, so yes, at the U of A, you can take woodwind techniques, percussion techniques, and brass techniques. And so for whatever instruments you don't play, you will learn to play them in 2 weeks on each instrument usually. And you even get to try the oboe and bassoon on a day, at least when I was taking it a couple years ago. And the concept is that you are learning the fingerings, the scales, and then oftentimes, at least when I was taking it, they show you the method books you would use. There's like a methodology as well, so that this is how you would start each kid. So you do learn how to do it. And like if a kid needs help with like a fingering on most of the instruments, I can tell them what the fingering is. And
gotcha.
And same with brass techniques too.
And this, I assume, came more during your experience here in the Department of Music. What happens when people take the education side of the degree?
Yeah, so...
What kind of things do you learn there?
Totally. So I guess I can only really speak limitedly on this just because I was at the French campus and our Faculty of Education there does not interact almost at all with the Faculty of Education here. But I spent time learning to conduct there. I spent time learning like pedagogy techniques, so like theories of how kids learn, the history of like sociology within education, histories of I did a lot of stuff about like minority French language education, which is a huge topic for people who learn to teach in French and in French immersion. And then specifically within music, it was learning. In most of my classes, it was like the day-to-day things. It's like, here's a song you can sing for when the kids are putting their recorders together. Or, here's a song, here's like what you can get out of the Carnival of the Animals with grade 1 students, right? Teaching them about movement, teaching them about timbre, teaching them about pitch. These are all things that you can take out of those things. So you do spend a lot of time learning the nitty-gritty and a lot of the background theory that will serve you fundamentally. And you also learn how to lesson plan in a very expanded way. I used to be very annoyed about that because I used to be like, I used to be like, why am I writing a 20-page lesson plan for 30 minutes of instruction? This took 12 hours for me to write this. What am I doing? But I actually think, and it's funny because I ask students now to do things they don't find useful. It's like, why am I showing my work on a math calculation? Why am I showing my work? Why do I have to draft something and get feedback before I send in the final copy? And it's realized that you do actually have to learn that thinking process. And I find generally it's very interesting. Lots of people think, maybe not lots of people, I have found that people find teaching to be inherent, that you're either a good teacher, you know how to do it, or you don't. Much like pitch, or people are like, you either have a good ear or you don't, but it is a teachable skill. And you do have to learn the thought process of lesson planning before you can get to the part where you just you scribble 4 words on a sticky note and you're like, that's what I'm doing today.
Yeah, no, for sure. There's so much that you can do to become a better organized, that sounds like basics, but that's also what's needed, kind of like in the, as you were saying, organizing your thought process. You have this amount of time.
Yeah.
I want to get to these people to play 3 notes, not 2, not 1, or maybe 1, but what else? Kind of like, so it takes organization for sure.
Totally, and you always forget how much more you know that they don't know. I remember I was teaching ORF, which is like xylophones for like grade 5 students a couple years ago, and I'm like, I can't play the xylophone. They're 10. They also cannot play the xylophone. So you're fine. You're literally fine. And but you do have to know how to teach them where to begin. And that is actually so hard. Telling a kid who plays something for you and you're like, okay, here's the goal. Describing the gap, that's easy. To be like, oh, you need to breathe, like your breathing needs to be smoother or your articulation needs to be clearer. But telling a kid how to start a note. I don't ever think about how to start notes when I play trombone, but I have to think about how to explain that to someone. That can be actually that's the challenging part, is beginning people, teaching them how to do something that they've never even conceived of in their entire life.
It's so fascinating, and I think it's one of the beauty of thinking about teaching that is not about how good you are, for example, as a trombone player, and kind of like, and here, listen to me, and I'm gonna do it, and you do it again. That's not teaching.
No. Yeah.
Sort of like, there is so much more to be said about finding ways in which people can understand what you do and how to do things in different way. And people also learn differently, which means that something, a trick that works well with one student might really not work well with someone that think differently. Have you had anything like this going on?
Specifically in music, I've had to think of lots of clever ways, once again, for teaching things that I find to be inherent that aren't inherent. So, like, for example, students that cannot conceive of rhythm. What do you do with a kid who can't conceive of rhythm? All the other kids are getting it. They can all they can all keep a quarter note, right? But this kid, to save their life, cannot. How do you begin to teach that? And so it does take some creative things, changing the part of the body they're feeling it on, getting them to move, walk in a different way, getting them to play their favorite song. It's like, can you sing all the words to this song? And then they can. So you have to really find like a different angle. It's like kind of like, if the kid is here, you kind of have to go stand like on all the sides to like look at the problem. And then another thing I found that really helps is like trying to have the same problem they do. So if like a kid can't buzz a certain note on a trombone, it's like, okay, well, I hear this sound you're making. If I try to make the sound, then I'm like, oh, you're doing this. Don't have your tongue so high in your mouth or whatever. Yeah. Lower your tongue. So you do have to think creatively, because lots of things that you take for granted that someone is blocked from knowing that in some way. Yeah. So you have to think about it.
It's so fascinating what you just said about, thinking about a different part of the body to do something. I sometimes talk with people that are in education in different fields. They might maybe a training with me, and they are doing things like this. A math prof that does all creative thinking about how to teach people to count. Yeah. So education can be a very fascinating and rewarding field, also to do creative thinking, research, creative thinking crossing between research, pedagogy, and actual creative activities like playing music, playing the trombone. So there's so much to discover there for people that are passionate about that. But maybe you can give us a bit of a sense of, you told us a bit what you do. Is there something else that you kind of like, because it sounds like you have a bit of a varied portfolio, right? Do you see yourself continuing the school system and in this kind of thing? Do you think at some point you might do more trombone playing or more composing? Like, how do you see these various things that you learned out of your education playing out? I loved how you started by saying, like, I'm all these three things. So where do you see yourself going with this? What's ahead for Olivia Menard?
Yeah, I feel really, like, with this question, I am grateful for so many things, because for the longest time, what I wanted to do is what I'm doing right now. I'm like, I want to teach a band program. I want to teach a Iona Sistema with my own class. And I want to play trombone sometimes and write sometimes. And you're
doing all of these things.
And that's what I'm doing right now. And that, I am so grateful for that. I mean, yes, I did work hard. Yes, but so many opportunities fell into place. I had so many teachers and mentors who helped me get to where I am. And so it's kind of interesting. I'm kind of at this point in my life where, my degrees are done. I have jobs. I have places to play.
That pay bills.
Yeah, that pay bills. Like, what is next? I throw this around a lot, I guess, like in my mind. I'm kind of like, well, I do want to get better at the trombone. Like, it'd be very cool to play, more orchestral music. That would be really great. And like, I would love to learn how to play more jazz music, because I don't know how to improvise. Well, I do, but I don't know how to improvise well yet. I want to write more music. Like, I would love to get paid to write music. So I think too, it's just like, in 5 years, like when I see it, it's quite similar, I think, to what I'm doing now, with just a little bit less teaching and maybe more writing and playing. I think for me, like, my passion really is about getting as much music to as many people as possible, and like in all the projects that I do, whether it's, I did a kids show this summer at Kids Fringe, so I was playing music with kids, or with the chamber orchestra, which is about providing opportunities to more people. To me, that's the most important thing. So the thing I think I would see myself letting go of is actually probably the school system, which is so crazy to me. For the longest time, I was like, all I want is to be in the school system. And now I'm there, and I'm like, I don't like professional development. I don't like long staff meetings, which is so, you have to deal with stuff like that. But and once again, like I feel like I'm in a position of privilege to say that, where I'm like, yeah, maybe one day I will let go of this regular paying job and this pension and these benefits because other things lie elsewhere for me. So,
but this is such a good thing to remind everyone of, that, you know, this might be, you know, you said for the longest time teaching was really my aim. You know, I would have skipped, you know, university and going straight into it. And, you know, it's so interesting how that now has become one of the things you do, that you see yourself maybe doing more, but, you know, you have other passions that are important, things that are important to you. So people don't choose yet, for sure. No. So this is one takeaway lesson from today. What are the things you would say to people pursuing now? It could be a BA, a BMass, a BMass B.Ed. Like, one of the things that for you was really struck us saying, like, ooh, yeah, this is really sounding to me as something that I would like to say to someone that is now in this degree, now that I am on the other side and doing these jobs. What is something that you would tell them to keep at the forefront, or have as an important things with them, or
I would say two things. First of all, go to as much stuff, try as many things as you can, go to people's concerts. You know, if there's a composition opportunity, apply for it. If there's an opportunity to do a clinic, do it. If there's an opportunity to have a festival or scholarship, apply for it. Do all those things. That's where you can end in really cool places. The other thing I would say is don't be afraid to suck. I'm serious though. I think there is such a perfectionism in music. And there is such a perfection, and it took so many hours in therapy for me to untie the like self-worth from, you know, my output as a musician and creative person. But trying something new and being bad at it is the greatest thing you can do for yourself, because then you know that your creativity, it doesn't have to be a marketable product to be art. It doesn't have to be something someone else would pay for it to be worth doing. You don't have to be amazing at everything you do. Yeah. You can just try something new, and you will always, like, sometimes you will fail. You will, and that's okay. And sometimes, but most of the time, when you try something, it's going to be good, and it's going to go better than you thought it would. And someone's going to be like, I'm so proud of you, and you're going to surprise yourself. So
yeah, and you know, sometimes it's really kind of like this journey of self-discovery, which I like thinking about university as something like that. Yeah. That is not something that necessarily, you know, there are bits of this university education that are very professionalizing and they're great, you know, but they're also about you sometimes getting out of your comfort zone and trying out something that you had not even thought that would have been something that you could do and pay your bills with.
Yeah.
And it's one of the things that I really like about what you do, Olivia, right now, is that you really manage to kind of like to get to do things that are important for you. You know, the past Olivia, the new Olivia. There is a piece of that in all that you do, and I want everyone to get that. And it's like, I can do that as well, and I don't need to have figured that out right now.
Exactly. And like, I think too, like, no decision you make is permanent either. Like I said, I really thought I was going to be the teaching was going to be the number one be all. I wasn't going to do anything else. But you can go back to school. Like, I could go to grad school if I wanted to. Just because I'm working right now doesn't mean I can't go to grad school for something. You know, I can apply for another job. I can volunteer somewhere. It's not like, it is serious, but it's not that serious, right? And I think too, sometimes like the absolutism where you're like, I have to do it this way. Like, I have to do it this way because, and I don't even think it's like told to you to do it that way, but you just see other people doing it and you're like, I have to go to grad school for this, or I have to get a job immediately. I have to start subbing. I have to do this. I have to get into it as soon as I can. And it's like, no. And I am really grateful because for all my undergrad studies, it took 7 years to get it all done, because I did my ed degree for 4 years and then my music degree. And for the longest time I was like, that's so long. How could I still possibly be in school? But it's like, I'm so glad I was in school. I'm so glad taking that time to figure out what I wanted to do, and I'm still figuring it out. It's cool.
Yeah.
We're chill.
And we're still, you know, the important things that I don't think is said enough, like, no one has ever arrived. Kind of like, it's not the finishing your degree, you get the stamp of approval and you've done learning for your life. You know, literally, I am in this profession, I am employed by university, and I keep learning every day from my students, from my colleagues, from things that I read from my job, from things that I write from my job. And that's true at every level. I don't think there is anyone in this room or in this building or in this campus that wouldn't tell you exactly the same. But sometimes you think, when you're starting an education degree or any education, you think, oh, this is the only time that things can happen. And maybe in the past it was a bit more formalized, and I see also, for someone like me, I got here from a very different context, different education system, and I was so amazed to see how the Edmonton community, for example, is much more, I saw a bit less of what you were saying in terms of fixation with perfection. I saw so many people engaging with art, music, and so many things in a way that is more to do with the community. And I love that. And I love also the way people engage with the Winspire as one place. In other institution, in other context, a place like the Winspire, which is the main concert hall of Edmonton, for those that don't know, it would be a forbidden place. But it's an incredible, there are so many different programs. You can go and be part of a concert where you get, you pay for a ticket and you get a free glass of wine.
Yeah.
And and you can drink in the wine during the concert. I come from Europe, that would have been, 15 years ago, that would have been crazy if people had told you that at one of the main concert hall symphony concert hall of a place. And I like that there is a kind of like a variety way to engage, even with the same repertoire.
Yeah.
So there is possibility for everyone, and you can make those possibilities. You could create those possibilities according to what you hold important. Just as Olivia said. Is there anything else that we should say before opening the floor to question, Olivia? Something that I haven't asked you, but that you would really like to say in this context?
Yes, I have two things. First of all, I agree. Edmonton is such a great community to play artistically in and to try things. People will support you. They will come out. It's amazing. And people want to see it. And I love that about this city. And I hope it is always that way forever and ever. And then the second thing is that sometime I remember, and maybe this was more my own perception than what was actually true, but I used to remember that there always seemed to be a huge divide between education and performance students. And I could see it socially with the people who were hanging out with other people. I could see it academically in terms of like who was doing what in which classes. I could see it in who was getting placed into what ensemble. And I remember just being so like cynical about that. And I don't think that was very fair of me to feel that way because, I had a conversation with Audrey Ochoa. Audrey is a jazz trombonist and teacher in the Edmonton area. She's quite well known and, she plays she travels the world to play her music and also teaches band. And she's like, I'm like, how do you find time to practice? And she said to me, she's like, well, it's actually the same job, like teaching and performing, it's the same thing. You're communicating ideas about music, you're communicating ideas to other people. And that totally changed my mind. And I think too, just to kind of touching again on that connection thing, that everything you do, it's not a monolith. You don't, just because you're an amazing performer doesn't mean you can't be an amazing teacher, and same thing both. They're tied. When you get better at both, you get better at one, you get better at both. So
yeah. Absolutely. Thank you for saying that, because we really, certainly the idea of a university education is this connectedness, and I know for sure that we in our department we're trying to make that as evocative and thought-provoking as possible as you go through a degree like this. But I would say it's time to open the floor to our audience, the online audience and in-person audience. So question for Olivia. Yes, Sabina.
As someone who's a couple of years behind you in your trajectory, I'm wondering how your work-life balance has shifted, going from school to working. Because hearing all the things you do as also a chronic overcommitter, I'm how do you fit it all in? I want to know your secrets.
Oh, great. I'm never stressed. I never cry about things, and everything is balanced and great all the time. Yeah. Things are good. I'm never mad about stuff. No, the big thing, I am an overcommitter, and that's actually something I am working on. I just turned 25. This is my year of no. I'm going to say no to people about stuff. But I do think the big thing is don't do as much at your teaching job as you think you need to. There is a lot of other commitments that slide in with teaching that have nothing to do with actual kids. And you don't have to say yes to those things all the time. And then the other thing I think that's really important is I don't plan at home. I don't mark at home. I don't do any of my teaching work at my house. When I'm home, if I'm home for the evening, like it's after 6 p.m., I'm home for the evening. I'm watching Downton Abbey. I'm eating my cheese, you know, I'm playing Mario Kart. I think it is really important to give yourself a night off. And I am lucky that my schedule allows that though, because of the way my part-time works. I can leave work at work, but that's the big thing. And I guess like the other thing too is quitting stuff is okay. They will survive. It's all good. If they need another person, they'll find someone. So, and I have to tell myself that sometimes. And I'm still working on that. It can be really hard. So there's a lot of people who come to you and they're like, can you do this? It's for the kids. And it's like, I don't want to go to the parent advisory council meeting. You know, where I don't want to talk about this, you know, the signage at the school for an hour and a half or whatever. Yeah, that was a random example I made up and has no basis in real life. Yeah.
No, but I think it's really important. And it's at the same time very important to put, especially at the beginning, to put yourself out there and you know get as many opportunities and see what opportunities are out there. But it's also very healthy to do what you said, to say no sometimes. You know, especially if something is not important to you at the moment, or you see that it's not the best things to get you to the level or the things. There's that, you know, select. There's not time for everything and anything.
Yes, and more on that, when you're teaching, steal resources from other teachers. They will give it to you though. Don't reinvent the wheel. Do not. Just stop. Just use the thing that already exists. Don't make your own method book. Don't, you know, make a new rubric. Just all the teachers, like if you ask me for something, I would give you everything I have. And any teacher would do the same. Don't spend time doing that kind of thing.
This is so important, and it can be applied to basically any teaching that everyone in this room would do, regardless whether you're choosing music education or if you're a PhD student that is going to, you know, teach a class for the first time. Ask for help, because people have tons of material, tons of rubric, and you don't need, especially at the beginning, you don't need to figure out your own. You can literally say like, oh, this sounds quite good. And then you compare it with other things and maybe you tweak it as you go into it and you make it more your own. But teaching comes with a baggage of material and meetings and things, and it can be overwhelming, but also it's amazing to be part of a bigger community, and people can be extremely generous about that. So don't hesitate to say like, hey, I need to teach you this course. Hey, I'm going to the school system for the first time. What do I need to know? Hey, can I see your materials, your lesson plans?
Yep. You can have it all.
Yeah.
It's all good.
Fabulous.
Yeah. Good question.
Other questions for Olivia? Yes.
So you are someone who is really, really good at a lot of different things. In terms of your career, how do you feel then that you or other people who do a lot of things would stack up against someone who really specializes in like one or two things? That's
like a really great question. And I think many people I know, you always compare yourself to the people you went to school with or to the people that you work with the most. Lots of the skills connect to one another. Like I'm a better trombone player now that I teach because I sing every day and now my ear is way better, those kinds of things. In terms of like where I am compared to other people who specialize, let's say like, for example, like composition. So for example, like I don't have works getting premiered like all the time. I'm not making money composing, which I am fine with. That's okay. I think a big thing too is being okay with not being the very best at everything, which once again, therapy helped me with that. So yeah, don't put that, so much of the pressure is so, at least for me, was so self-inflicted, right? And I think too, like I'm not, like I said, many of the things that I had to learn how to do were learned from accepting that I was not okay at them, because that's when the true progress can begin, is when you know that you're like, I'm not very good at this. What do I need to do to change better. That? Yeah. And then I think people who like really specialize at things are so cool, and like I think that they rock. And I know many people like that, and I love them very much. So yeah.
And so maybe, you know, you want to specialize. You don't want to specialize, don't specialize. You know, I think that there's opportunities there for all of this. And the nice thing is that you can choose how much you want to specialize or how much you invest. I think there's a lot of, I don't know exactly what you had in mind when you were asking that question, but I could see kind of like, if I look at this room, I could see people doing that in a very, even just the thing specialize, people do it in a very different way. So as long as you don't feel compelled to do it in the one way.
Yeah. And I think too, like specialization, like when you have like depth of knowledge instead of like width, so like when you know something really well, that knowledge applies to other things too. So
Yeah, for sure.
Yeah, that's cool.
Other question, Caleb.
Thanks for this, really great to hear. We've heard lots about what you took away that was really great in the program. I'm curious if looking back on 4 years of your education, you think of anything that you're like, I wish I had done this, or I wish this had been offered to me as a part
Something
of
that
my
I'm
degree.
like that I felt that was missing.
Not necessarily something that was bad here, but something I would say that's missing.
Missing. That's a really great question. I have to think. You know, I really wish I had spent more time in singing situations and learning more about people who don't have those things come naturally, because I've had to figure a lot of that out. You know, and then like I said, like instrument operation came naturally to me, but the inner music thing did it. And then like through a lot of time and repetition, I learned how to fix that for myself. But learning how to communicate that to other people at a very baseline level, specifically about music itself, would have been cool. So I guess like pedagogy of like kind of oral skills pedagogy, I know that kind of exists, but just learning how to teach fundamental basics, I would have appreciated.
I love that.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So, but
Noted.
no, yeah.
I'll bring it to council.
Yeah, got it.
Other questions? Yes.
What was your favorite class you took during your degrees?
Okay, in my ed degree, I took a class about, this is so funny. I took a class about just like conducting, but it's so different than how it is here. It was just choir conducting, which I'm not like I said, I'm not a singer, right? But it was so fun because we would just have like Mozart's Requiem playing and we'd just like conduct along to that. That was just great. Love Mozart's Requiem, fun time. Here, my favorite music course I took, I don't know, there's so many good ones. I'll start with my non-music course. I took History of Art and Visual Design, which was like pre-colonial America all the way to 1945. Ooh. That was so cool. I'd never thought about art in that way. It was awesome. In terms of music courses, it's like a three-way tie between the music theory research class I did, where I got to analyze a piece of music, Cultures of Romanticism, which is a course about, I don't know how to explain that quickly. It's about
Cultures of Romanticism.
Cultures of Romanticism. It was super fun. And then, it's a four-way tie. My composition lessons and my trombone lessons. I loved them all very much. So,
but I like what you said about kind of like one thing that people sometimes forget is that by being in this degree, you can also take courses in other faculties, in other programs, and that can be so mind-opening.
Yes.
And you know what is art if you're looking from the perspective of what you said, Central America.
Yeah.
Amazing.
Or just the United States. Just like, it was so interesting.
Fabulous. Yeah. Very.
It's like so many things I didn't know. Oh, and then I also took when I did my math minor in my first degree, I took abstract algebra, which was crazy because that's actually. And it's like ring theory. You know what that is? It's just pitch class sets. And I was like, wow. Because the prof for the abstract algebra class is like, this has no applications. And then it did for Schoenberg. So take that, abstract algebra. It was great.
Well,
so,
you should go back to the teacher and say like, actually.
Yeah, actually, I got a D in your class. However, I would like to educate you. Yeah.
Yay.
Yeah. Yeah.
Perfect.
Yeah.
Any other question for Olivia? Yes, go right ahead.
Olivia, I recall that you and I took a music technologies course together.
Yes.
How often do you use technology in the classroom, in your education, in your compositions? How does that impact the way that you work?
That's such a great question. So for a long time when I was composing, I was just composing using like notation software, so like MuseScore or Finale, and then for a while I was like writing pencil. I've just started using digital audio workstations to write, where I'll record myself playing and singing, which is really exciting. In terms of teaching, I do prepare exercises for my students specifically for the context of addressing like weaknesses they might have that might not be in the textbook. But I did just say steal everything, but sometimes you do need to make something yourself, so I use notation software for that. In terms of music processing, when we record stuff for RCO, River City Chamber Orchestra. I do have to cut that sometimes. I prepare practice tracks for people when people were learning like my music we did like a reading of my musical over the summer, and I had to prepare practice tracks for people. So there is definitely a lot to be said for it. I don't use it as much as someone who works, directly with recording. And if I composed more, I would definitely use it. But there's definitely applications, I would say, for it. And what I love about it is that class was so great because it kind of introduced you to everything. But YouTube has so much information; you can teach yourself to do anything. So
It's
which is pretty cool.
Yeah.
So yeah.
Fabulous. Excellent question. Thank you. Any other curiosity to ask Olivia? Any online
Nothing from my
question?
grandmas. Yeah.
A shout out to Olivia's
Yeah.
grandma.
Hi, Nana. Hi, Granny. Yeah.
If there are no other questions, remember the questions about music is totally about staying and having a glass of wine after this. But in the meantime, can we give a round of applause to Olivia for this wonderful conversation?
Yeah. Thank you for having me.
Stay and ask questions over a glass of wine, and see you again soon for the next. Stay tuned for what else is coming in this forum. And thank you again, Olivia.
Thanks for having me. Teachers love talking about themselves, so this is great. Yeah.